You sit down to play a chess game, maybe online, maybe with a friend. You are focused, calculating, and thinking about your next move. Finally, you make your move with full confidence, but the very next second, you realize it's a blunder. Your opponent quickly takes advantage of it, and you end up with frustration, anger, and regret. But don't worry, in this video, I am not just going to talk about blunders. I will give you a simple anti-blunder checklist that you can start using right away. And if you follow it properly, you can reduce almost 100% of your blunders. Imagine yourself playing with full confidence, knowing that you won't blunder or throw away a winning position with just one silly move. Still, 90% of games are lost because of blunders, and if you manage to stop making them, it suddenly becomes very hard for your opponent to beat you. Before knowing how to prevent blunders, let's know why blunder happens and what are its types. The root cause of blunder is you give your opponent a chance to play forcing moves against you. Generally, forcing moves are checks, captures, and attacks, and this is nothing but our checklist. Now let us look what are the types of blunders. The first one is when you blunder a mate or give a chance to your opponent to attack your king. The second one is when you blunder a piece or hang a piece. And the third one is when you give your opponent to play a tactical shot or a tactical combination. Example of blundering check could be king b3, so that white knight can go on c1, fork this king and the rook. So the king is forced to move, now he takes the rook, and after rook takes, you can see black is exchange up from this position. Another example could be playing queen d8, so that white can give rook h8 check. The king is forced to take this rook, no other place is left for the king. So the king is forced to take. Now we go knight takes f7, a fork to this king and the queen. So the king is again forced to move, and now only we take the queen, and after he captures, you can see you have got a queen in exchange of a knight and a rook, which is a totally winning endgame. So these were basic examples. We are going to practice more positional examples in the upcoming video, so stay tuned. Example of blundering capture would be playing g6 in this position, so that white can play queen takes d7, sacrificing the queen, attacking this black queen and this bishop. So the black queen is forced to take our queen, and now only we can play knight f6 check, forking this queen and the king. King is forced to move. Now we take the queen, attacking the rook. Once the rook moves, we can save our knight, and you can see we are a full piece up from this position. Example number 2 can be rook takes d5, thinking that we have a support of the queen, but you can just take this rook, because now if black takes this rook, then his rook hangs like this. If he doesn't do anything, then his queen is going to be captured on the next move. Example of blundering attack could be queen takes g2. Didn't calculated any attacks, but we have a danger. Bishop e4. This traps the queen. Queen have no square to go, so he is forced to take our rook. Now we take the queen and enjoy the game with full queen up from this position. Example number 2 of blundering an attack would be playing rook e7, blocking this queen's way of going back. He was trying to double up, but now we can play h4, and you can see the queen is totally trapped, so he is forced to sacrifice his queen for the value of rook. Now we take the queen with the pawn, and we have a great pawn chain, and we have got this extra knight to win, because queen is enough for 2 rooks. Now let's look some more positional examples and also look how to prevent the blunders. White played just b5 to push this pawn forward and queen it, but he didn't saw or didn't apply the checklist, which was checks, captures, and attacks, and he got checkmated like this. So to prevent it, you have to apply a checklist which is checks, captures, and attacks before your every move. Let's say before this b5 move, you apply the checklist. The first one is we will check for checks. The checks can be rook f2 check, rook on b goes on f2 check, and rook h1 check. And when you check, rook h1 is going to be a checkmate. So you see that and you need to avoid it. So instead of playing this b5, you can just go for king g1, and now you can see you have stopped blundered from being a checkmate, and now your pawn goes forward and you can just win this game easily. In this position, white played knight e6 to just threaten checkmate on this g7 square, but he forgot one thing, checks, captures, and attacks, which ended up resulting in this fork to this king and the rook. So the king is forced to move. Now he loses the rook and also defends this checkmate. So he has thrown a winning position into a losing position. So instead what he should have done is, just after this knight to e6, he should have checked, are there any checks, captures and attacks, and which of them is deadly. Queen takes e2 is nothing, the king can just take it. Queen d1 check, the king can just go on this f2 and nothing is attacked. And after this queen a1 check, he can observe that this king gets checked as well as this rook gets attacked. So he knows this queen a1 check is deadly, so he can just prevent it with, instead of playing this knight e6 move, he can just go rook g6, pressurize more to threaten checkmate, and after he defends on this e7, now you can go knight e6 and you can see there are no more deadly checks and your pieces are also safe. In this position, white played knight e5. Again, he forgot to apply the checklist, checks, captures and attacks. So, can you find why was it a blunder? Yes, you start with all the checks. There is queen takes h2 check, but the king can take it and it is nothing dangerous. Are there any other checks? No, there are no other checks. So let's move towards all the captures. There is queen takes f4, but you can see this pawn can take it. There is this rook takes f4, but yes, again the pawn can take it. Again, are there any captures? Yes, there is rook takes e5. Now you can see there is a discovered attack on this queen, but the queen can take the rook, so it is nothing dangerous again. Are there any other captures? Yes, there is queen takes g3, and now you will say this pawn can just take it, and what is dangerous in it? But what I said, we have to calculate 3 moves ahead. After this queen takes, you can see this h file is pretty open. This rook can go on h5, a discovered attack on this queen and the king, so the king is forced to move, and now you can see we take the queen, attack the rook, and what we have done is we have just gained a full rook from this position and this game is totally winning. So instead of blundering this game, what white should have done is he just looked for checks, captures and attacks, and now he can discover that this rook is hanging. So instead of playing that, what he should have done is he should have played queen to g2, first defend this rook and this checkmate, and now whatever they play, let's say rook h5, you have defended your checkmate, now your rook is safe and the player who is winning is white. So this is what basically you have to do. If you don't find any deadly check, go for capture. If you don't find any deadly capture, then you can go for attack. And if there are no deadly checks, captures and attacks, then the move you are playing is totally safe. There is no blunder in it, and sometimes it can be the best move in that position. Here, black attacked this rook with e4, and now he moved his rook on h3. Can you find what was the blunder in it? You start with all the checks, captures and attacks. You see, are there any checks? There is queen takes g2, but the queen and king guard this pawn 2 times, so it is nothing dangerous. No, so let's go for captures. Again, this is a capture. Again, queen takes c3 is a capture, but this queen can take it and there is no more continuation. Now let's check for attacks. Are there any attacks? Yes, there is queen to g4 attacking this rook as well as this d1 rook. Both are undefended because you can see even if this pawn is defending this rook, after this queen moves, you can see this pawn will be pinned to the king. And now whatever they play, if they save this rook, then you can see we can grab this rook. The queen can't be grabbed because of this pin on the king. And now if he tries to save this rook, then you can see this d1 rook is undefended. And now you just have to move your queen, and now only you can see black is 2 rooks up from this position. So instead of going on h3, he should have checked for all the checks, captures and attacks and discovered that queen g4 was a deadly attack. So he must have moved on f4, and now this was a drawish like position where there are more counter attacks, but instead he blundered his rook with going on h3.
Oh my god!
In this position, white just castled, and sad to say, it's again a blunder. Why? Let's start with all the checks, captures and attacks. In this position, there is this knight b3 check, knight d3 check. So neither of them is dangerous because we can just take with the pawn, or if knight d3 check, we can just take with the queen. So nothing dangerous. Are there any other checks? Yes, there is this bishop to f4 check, and this is dangerous. You can see there is a discovered attack on this queen, as well as your king is in check. If you move your king, then your queen loses this way. So you have to block with any of the piece like this, and now you can see you lose your bishop this way. And if you take the bishop, then again your queen remains undefended. The opponent can take your queen. So before castling, to prevent blunders, you just check are there any dangerous checks. After this castling, you would have discovered that bishop f4 check is a dangerous check. Now once he knew that castling is deadly, what he can do is he can just go for some trading of pieces like this, and after this queen takes c8, rook takes c8, you can just go king d1, and now you can see you have prevented your all the blunders, and also your game is safe. You are winning this position. This is a very tricky position. Here you can see this black knight was being attacked, so he moved on this e5 square, and now you will say it's a big blunder because now queen can go on a5, check this black king, attack this bishop, and once the king moves or block with some bishop, you can just take this bishop, and this is what happened in the game. But in this case, black resigned and white won the game. And one surprise to tell you, black also didn't calculated checks, captures and attacks, and white also didn't calculated for checks, captures and attacks. In this position, if you take the bishop, you can see there is this knight d3, a deadly check, forking this queen and the king. So king is forced to move. Now you take the queen, and you can see that bishop was a poisoned bishop. So how could he avoid the blunder? Yes, with just simple checks, captures and attacks. You can see after this queen takes, he can calculate for checks, captures and attacks. In this case, there is knight d3 check which forks this king and the queen. So instead of taking this bishop, what he had just done is after this bishop d7, he can just move his queen on this b3 square, save it from blundering like this. This black queen was being attacked, so he moved on this d8 square to just ask for a trade like this, but he forgot to apply the checklist, checks, captures and attacks, and which ended up in blunder. So can you guess it? Why was it a blunder? You start with all the checks. Are there any checks? Queen takes d8 isn't a check, so rook takes e8, we cannot take this rook because there is this knight. So now we have knight takes g6 check, but you will say black can just take it, and what is in it? No, you have to calculate at least 3 moves ahead. So now you can see there is rook takes e8 check. You are forking this queen and the king, but you will say, what are you saying? This knight can just take it. But no, you can see this queen hangs, and now we are totally a full queen up from this position. And here, if you don't take with the knight, if you take with the queen, then you can see there is our bishop. This bishop can take this queen, and after this knight takes, you can see we have gained a full queen against these two pieces, which is a totally winning endgame. So you can see black ended up in doing a blunder. So instead of playing this queen d8 move, you should have checked for all the checks, captures and attacks. You should have discovered that queen d8 is a blunder. So he must have played queen takes e7, just sacrificing his queen. And now you can see he got 2 pieces for a queen, and also he has 2 passers, and it is enough to draw the game. But instead, what he has done in actual is blundered the whole game. Here black played knight f6 just for the sake of development, but white got a chance to attack this knight with e5, and in the game he moved it to h5, which was a big blunder. Can you find it why? You start with all the checks, captures and attacks. There is queen takes d7 check, but queen can take it, and there are no more checks. Now let's go for captures. There is queen takes a7, but this rook can take it, so it is also nothing dangerous. Now let's move towards our attacks. You can see this knight is defenseless, so you can go and attack it with bishop e2, queen to g4 and queen to d1, but in all the 3 cases, the black can defend this knight with g6. Now you will say, why he will just defend? Can't he move that knight? So the simple answer is no. You can see this queen is covering this f4 square, this pawn is covering this f6 square. Now these 2 pawns are covering this g3 square, and the back going square is covered with his own pawn. So the knight is totally trapped, and we just have to play g4, an attacking move on this knight. And now whatever they play, it is just going to be a trade of a pawn for a knight, which is completely winning for white. So instead of moving it on h5, he should have checked for all the checks, captures and attacks and discovered that g4 attacking move traps our knight. So instead of moving on h5, he should have gone on g8, means that a completely fine position. This is an example of first capture, then followed by a check. Like you will understand with the example. Here you can see black took this h7 pawn thinking that this rook is defended with our bishop, so no need to worry, but white can just take it. After bishop takes, this c7 file is open. He can give bishop takes h7 check. King is forced to take the bishop and now white wins the rook. So this is how you see you blundered a winning game into a losing. Instead, after this capture, you should have checked for all the checks, captures and attacks, and you can definitely avoid these type of blunders. This is an example of first check followed by an attack. Here we were winning until knight e7, because now white can just play queen takes b7 check. King is forced to go on d7, and now there is bishop b6 attacking our queen. If our queen moves somewhere else, like on a4, then there is queen takes c7 check. The king is forced to go on e8, and now queen takes d8 leads to a checkmate like this. So the queen is forced to take our bishop, and now he takes with the rook. We cannot recapture because it is pinned to the king, and from a completely winning position, we have lost it with just blunder, which was not to calculate CCA. After this knight e7 move, he should have seen that queen takes b7 is a deadly, so he should have must avoided it with the moves like b5. Example of check then followed by a capture could be taking this pawn on c6 with the bishop, because now black can just play rook c1. There is no piece to block, so you are forced to move on g2, and now only black can sacrifice this rook, so that after rook takes, he has an extra bishop which can go on e4, fork this king as well as this rook. King is forced to move. Now he takes the rook and enters into a winning endgame. But before playing this bishop takes c6, the game was complete draw. But again, with not calculating all the CCA, you can end up in doing blunders, and also if you calculate it, you can end up in a winning position because you will not do any blunder. This is an example of capture followed by capture. Here this game was also a draw until black played e6. Now you can see white can just play rook takes b7, sacrificing the rook, so that after rook takes, now he can play bishop takes c6. He's again forking this rook and the rook, so one rook has to move. Now he takes the another rook and ends up in a full bishop up from this position. So what he should have done is calculated all the checks, captures and attacks after this e6 move. Then he should have discovered that rook takes b7 is dangerous, and instead of playing this e6, he should have gone for bishop a8, trading off these rooks like this. This is an example of check followed by an attack. Like here the game was completely drawn, but here white played a4, which was a big blunder because black got a chance to play rook f1 check. The king is forced to go on b2, because if he goes on d2, then there is rook f2 check, winning this queen. So after king b2, black plays anyway rook f2, pinning this queen to the king. The queen cannot move anywhere, but now you will say we can just take this rook, but no, there is knight d3 check. Now the king is forced to move. Now black takes this queen and a complete knight down in this position, which is a complete winning for black. So white has just blundered a drawn game into a losing because of not calculating CCA. This is a unique example because here there is first a check, then there is a capture, and then there is again a check. Black was in a completely winning position until he played rook d7 without calculating all the checks, captures and attacks, which ended up in a blunder, because now white can just play knight takes e5, opening up this d file, and if king moves, then white can just take this rook and he will be a rook up. So black is forced to take this knight, and now only he can play rook takes d7, a capture, because now he's attacking this queen. If queen moves, then he can just save his rook and be a full rook up. But now after taking this, white has lured this queen on such a square that after knight takes e5, there is fork to this both king and the queen. The king is forced to move. Now he takes the queen, and enjoys the full game with a clear winning advantage. So he must have gone rook d5 because now there is no deadly checks, captures and attacks. This move is safe, you can double down and enjoy the game easily.